Thank you for tuning in to the Unjiggered podcast. If you enjoy listening, please consider subscribing and giving us a rating on your podcast service of choice. Also, don't forget to like and tag us on Instagram at unjiggered_media. Thank you to everybody for listening, and now on with the show. You're listening to Unjiggered, a bartender podcast where we interview highly successful bartenders about their careers, lives, and the passion of bartending. Our guest this week is Daniel Dove. Join us as Daniel explains how he shaped the position of brand ambassador, as well as managing what probably is considered the most prestigious cocktail competition in the world, Diageo World-class. Tune in to hear more about how Daniel created the very first bartending talent agency and how he is helping the whole community to transition to what he believes the future of the bar industry will be. So sit back, relax, and enjoy.
So Dan Dove here, owner and founder of the world's first bartending talent agency, Global Bartending, here with the super Michele with our first podcast.
Woo! Awesome. Thank you very much for finding the time. It's great to finally hear your voice. We haven't been chatting for a while, haven't we?
No, it's great to hear your voice, man. Happy to have you back in the UK.
Awesome. So let's crack on. Obviously, I know you very well from your years at Diageo, but your career started way before that. You're born in the UK, but you moved out, am I right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, not many people, I guess, know this about my earlier career, but I studied in the UK, and then when I was about to do my A-levels, my family decided to move to Spain. So we literally sold everything we had. We put our cat, our dog, all of our furniture in a truck and drove out to the south of Spain, in a town called Javier, just below Valencia. And yeah, it was a fresh start for me and my family.
And so you studied there, did you?
I did. I studied for 1 year there, and then met some friends in a bar, and one of as you do, as we still do, right? As we still do very well. And I met a guy that owned randomly a bar and a hairdresser's, and so I needed to learn Spanish and needed to find a way.
So, but like, were the two businesses combined? Was it like the same?
It was randomly amazing, still very good friend of mine, Danny, his name was, and he owned one of the coolest hairdressers in town and also the coolest bar in town. Great entrepreneur, fabulous guy, and learned a lot of him actually in my early career. And so when I was 17, I went to work for him. His father was Spanish and his mother English, so we got on amazingly well. And I actually started washing hair and colouring hair in his hairdressers for 6 months, which was
so weird.
Oh man, it's so weird. It was a great experience though, because it allowed me to definitely pick up my Spanish very quickly. But also to interact with people at that time. And I was very unsure what I wanted to do because I'd actually studied to become a vet originally. So I've gone from, years and years of studying maths and science, to then eventually go to university to become a vet. And now I found myself in a hairdresser's, for 6 months when I was 17. And then, I realized after that time that, that wasn't going to be my career path. And he offered to say, look, we lived in a very, a touristic area, and in the summer was the most amazing bar life. And he said, would you like to work in my bar on a Friday and Saturday night? Which I did. And that's where my love for the bar industry started when I was 17 and working as a bar back in a cocktail bar in Spain.
But how was bartending back then there? Was it a cocktail bar of sorts, or was it more like a party bar?
No, it was a cocktail bar. It was one of the only dedicated. It was a Mexican cuisine, but fully sort of dedicated cocktail bar. We were making 600 to 700 cocktails a night in there with a team of 4 of us behind the bar. And it was absolutely just the place where it kicked off at night, where everybody would come to, smashing out Blue Lagoons. And
That's so cool.
Yeah, man. But it was an amazing start, and it was somewhere where I knew this is what industry I wanted to be in.
So what was it that made you realize this? Because at this point you've done some hairdressing, which I'm assuming went well, considering how sharp you look all the time. Then
not today.
Obviously you studied. Well, we're all coming out of a pandemic, so we're kind of excused. Then obviously you studied a completely different field, but somehow bartending stuck to you. Why is that?
I think for me, the most important part, which I think is, I know it's yourself and many others in the industry, is the hospitality side, and, making sure that when people come in to, visit you or visit your team or, the venue, that you look after them in the best possible way and get them the best experience. And I guess my whole career has been, off the back of that, of building experiences in many different formats and very different ways. But that's where my passion lies from day one. And that's what I loved, all the way from there, working in a cocktail bar at 17, to all the way through where I've got to now, 18 years later. That's always been the core attribute of what I've, loved doing. So.
Yeah, and it's funny to see that the more I speak to my colleagues, the more I realize that what keeps us in this industry is not the cocktail making aspect of it, although that's for sure, it's a lot of fun, but it's more about the hospitality, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, creating new experiences has been something that allows me to express my artistry and my mind in my career of what I've done, because I think, as much as I loved bartending, and working behind a bar, which I did for many, many years as my base, my real passion was taking that expertise of drink making and service, and managing a team, and then putting that into more experiential and marketing led, campaigns or, in my career.
That's fantastic. And how many years did you spend in Spain?
So I was there for about 6 to 7 years. That's
quite a bit.
Yeah, I spent my late teens, early 20s in Spain, which I would never change for the world. It made me who I am today, and I had the best time ever. I always spoke to my friends who were at university at the time, and they would always, try to come over just with pure jealousy of knowing the life I had out there. But met some great long-term friends that I actually, Ross, who is currently in my team here at Global Bartending, we met when we were 17 back in Spain, and I've got many, many close friends now that we still go out together now. So yeah, absolutely met friends for life, and started my career there.
At what point did you decide to move back? What was the reason behind it?
There was a couple of reasons. One is that my family, we as a whole, decided to move back. I did always, assist my dad, who moved out there. He was he had a large construction firm in the UK and moved that out to Spain. And so I always helped him alongside the admin side of that business. And then once the recession hit in Spain, we decided to come back to the UK. And also for my opportunities later in life, there were, as we knew, the London bar scene has always been electric, has always been amazing. But at that point in particular as well, the cocktail scene was really kicking off in London, and there was a couple of opportunities where me and a couple of friends from Spain had to come over. And so, we moved back to London and actually started at the Ping Pong Group in London. Back in the day, it was an amazing place to be. It was, as we all know, it was one of those first sort of chains that grew very, very quickly in London. But when they opened, it was one of the first times this fusion of cuisines had come along, and really a heavy focus on top quality cocktails alongside that. And so I was part of that team, and we grew from 1 bar to 12 in a matter of 2 years there. So it was a fast growth.
Wow, that's huge.
Yeah, it was huge. And it was great to experience that and be part of that team, and, training up bar teams for each of those openings. And then decided to leave there after about 1.5 years, 2 years.
So just to touch on the ping pong bit a little, for a bit, what challenges do you have when you expand a concept across so many venues in such a short period of time?
Well, there's the obvious ones, which I think we've all experienced in some format, staffing, absolutely, to be able to cater and keep the quality where you've had, we had our flagship, opening in Great Marlborough Street, actually, in central London, and then, started expanding out to Notting Hill and, Bayswater, etc. And, staff was the number one. So, we had to, within 6 months, create, an internal training school as such to be able to pull through that amount of not just bar staff, but managers and floor, which I was, integral in that part of that training team of building that program, which was, great, starting from nothing almost and building that from, ground zero up. And then, Yeah, and consistency. So we had to look at the logistics of where and how a lot of our, ingredients were purchased, and some of them pre-batched. We moved into a large warehouse just outside London to be able to cater for that as well, to opening a chain. So yeah, there were lots of changes, but my focus at that time within that team was not on the logistics of that, but more on the training side.
Mm-hmm. And what was the next step in your career after that?
Well, it was at that time we had a number of brands coming in speaking to us, as we all do in bars, and there were a couple of brands where they were coming in asking if we would bartend for them at certain events within that summer. And what I realised was at that time that there were a real lack of bar event companies in London. I mean, now there's so many and great companies, that exist out there now, but back in the day, there really weren't that many. Alan and the team at Sweet and Chili were just starting to pick up. They were they've always been a fantastic business. Shaker, Create, there were a few around, but what I really did see an opportunity of creating a bar-led events business that catered for brands, and that's where the whole experiential side of my career started. And so I opened up a business called UK Bar Management. And we started working for, one of our biggest contracts was Bombay Sapphire. We used to work back in the day with Jamie Walker and Sam and Merlin, and so we created some amazing experiential events for them across Europe, in Italy, Spain, the UK. And that really then sort of diversified into, ended up doing, bar catering at weddings, and lots of private events. And I ran that business for 5 years successfully. It was a great part. I was still in my early to mid 20s at the time. So I went through a massive learning curve through operating a bar events business, which is a very different beast to running a bar. But I found out that was where my love sat more than operating a bar, was the experiential and event side.
And why is that? What is it? What are the key differences that made you like one more than the other?
I guess from an event perspective, I personally buzz off of short timelines. So I love someone setting me a task of saying, Dan, you've got 1 week to pull this off. And so I know the way my brain is structured and the way that I can operate. And it drives huge passion for me to be able to execute on short time frames. And that was really that was the noticeable difference from a sort of, working in the bar restaurant industry, where you may have a 6-month plan to develop a drinks menu. And then, you've got these, months of timelines, and never days or weeks. So that's something that I really love doing. And the whole idea of preparing for events, people that know me, yourself as well, I have a serious OCD. I love everything in its place. I'm all over, huge in preparation. I believe preparation is what sets you up for life, not just in business. And so the preparation involved in event execution is continuous, and as we will say, we know it's, 80-90% of the success of an event is in the prep. And so, that's what I love doing.
So it's fantastic. And so this company, how did it go after 5 years? Because you mentioned, was it 5 years? Was it something that you thought, okay, it's a chapter of your life that you wanted to close, or was any other reason that led you to move on?
Do you know what? I've never shared this before, but halfway through my UK bar management, so about 2 to 3 years into that, I knew by working with brands such as Bombay Sapphire at the time that I would love to become a brand ambassador, and that was where the love of that part of my career started. And so I did actually go for an interview with Bombay Sapphire for the global brand ambassador, but I think I was only
no way.
Yeah, man, I think I was only about 23 at the time, 22. Okay. And not that age makes a big difference, but I think experience does. And I think it's what you've had within those years that sets you up, and I was probably quite naive at the time to think that maybe at 22, 23, I could become a global ambassador for one of the most iconic gins in the world. Having had my event experience and running and owning a bar, and then, I thought at that time I had everything in the locker that I needed to represent a global brand. And and looking back now and obviously going through and managing ambassadors, I knew I was not quite ready for that, but I did that. I didn't get that job. I carried on working with UK Bar Management, running that for a couple more years. And then, and then I saw the availability of the brand ambassador job for Zacapa Rum. Zacapa had just come into the UK market, and there was an agency looking for a brand ambassador. And for me, my love of luxury, my love of rum, and my passion for becoming a brand ambassador, I interviewed for the job and got it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, still congratulations for that, even if it's quite a while ago. But what I find very interesting about this period of time is that I think brand ambassadors were not, as a position, it wasn't well defined back then, I think. I think now we have sort of like an expectation of what a brand ambassador is supposed to be. While back then it wasn't a thing, was it? So your generation of brand ambassadors were the people that actually shaped the position to what it is nowadays, right?
Yeah.
Did you feel that way or did you feel like you had a clear role when you joined that job?
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely sit here today and say that the job role had evolved massively in the time that I was part of Diageo. So, I started back in 2009, so 11 years ago. And as you say, the role of the brand ambassador had not been defined very well. It was even more misunderstood than it is today, and what value that a brand ambassador brings to a brand or a larger corporate business. And so your job profile changed a lot day to day. So I was, my first year of Zacapa was purely going around to, some of the best bars and restaurants in London, working on menu concepts with bar managers and chefs. And trainings. So I was booking in something up to, 10 to 12 trainings a week for high-end bars and restaurants in London. That was 11 years ago. And, going through that, we then, I guess a business like Diageo, one of the most amazing drink businesses ever to work for. They're so good at what they do, and especially on a brand ambassador level and a bartender advocacy level as well. Our reserve team, our Diageo reserve team, definitely evolved over that time. We grew about eightfold in terms of turnover and size and team size during the time that I was part of it. So, it was an amazing part of our career, all of us. And when I say all of us, by the time I left, there were 47 of us in that team, from brand ambassadors to our marketing team, our sales. So yeah, it was a great, and I would never change that team for the world. We had the most amazing experiences. And after working with Zacapa, which is still literally in my blood today, I still, Lorena Vasquez is still my second mum, I call her. Man, she's amazing, that woman. And everything about Zacapa I still love and would, promote and sell to my deathbed, I think. So, and then from Zacapa, I moved into managing our brand ambassador team as that grew, developing that just legendary team. I still, I love them guys to pieces and girls. It was such an amazing part of all of our career, and I'm hoping they would back me in saying that I had all of their, not just business and career lives, but their personal lives at best at heart. And, I dedicated my 5-6 years there managing that team to the best of my ability.
That was a crazy times, because I remember having a lot of interactions with the team at the time, and I met a few of them during my time here back in the UK, because some of them are like now working for other brands, or like some of them are still with Diageo, I'm assuming. But yeah, there was a cracker of a team. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, man.
And you guys worked quite hard on World-class as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's where my role evolved into becoming managing World-class. So as World-class was growing, again, World-class as an entity, amazing platform for the trade. I started again my career at Diageo when World-class program started back in 2009. And then saw that grow alongside our team and the on-trade. And alongside that become the level of bartenders and the quantity of the level of bartenders across the globe, but we went from, 20 to 60 countries with World-class over that period. And, man, you've been part of it many times and performed amazingly well at the finals. And, you understand what it takes to get there and be part of the family as well, which is an amazing family to be part of.
But I think, bartenders, we always talk about how it feels to join competitions from our side. What I'm interested to hear about is how do you guys who organize these competitions feel about it? Because, for instance, having seen World-class, which probably is the most important competition that we have in our industry, you must be quite involved every year, from an emotional standpoint, because you take this group of people, right? And you invest a lot of time and energy, and then you sort of have your own team, no? That represents the country and the place where you work for, that goes and competes against other teams, right? I don't know, how is it from your end?
Oh man, the guys that especially have then won the UK finals and then come out to the global finals with me over the years, you will know my just pure passion for making sure they have everything they need at every second of the day. We were sleeping 2 hours a night at the global finals to make sure that, likes of Aidan and Ali and Jamie and, everybody, we've had the most amazing experiences out there. But I am and was when I was part of the team, 100% emotionally invested in that, not just brand and building, the UK program and, the content of the competition and, and our brand ambassador team to help manage it. But, from a bartender perspective, as it was my love. It was me for 6 years. And as you know, man, like coming in, to the Savoy back in the day and then seeing all of you guys make it through and then perform at the finals. And, it was just the most unbelievable thing to see when we spend so many hours as ambassadors out in the trade, working with you guys on many different levels throughout the year outside of World-class. And then to see, some of you make it through and then perform the most amazing performances at the finals was just great, man. Some of the best moments in my life.
Would you like to give us some examples of some of the most rewarding moments that you had? Because let's not forget that you guys as a UK team, you have arranged some amazing competitions. For instance, the one that happened on a plane. Would you like to talk to us about the logistics of that?
Yeah, it was absolutely crazy. I think Gareth will definitely tell you in detail around that year. But yeah, running, we've run, just talking from a GB, a UK perspective, not a global level. The global finals are a whole different ball game in terms of logistics. But, just from the UK perspective, when we used to run our finals all the way, up in Scotland to the north of England, as you say, through Heathrow Terminal 5 in duty free when we were, we had to organize all assets, so all ingredients, all equipment to get through customs and security, obviously with, limitations on liquid size. So that was one of the hardest that the team ever had to pull together was the UK final at Heathrow Terminal 5. But that was a great partnership with Virgin that we took the winner over to New York. And they had to create their drinks. And it was, inspired by the aviation and creating drinks on a plane. So, that was a standout experience.
What were they making drinks on this plane? Because I don't see any way of making, you don't have any bars on planes, do you?
Well, no, they had organized it with Virgin. So they had a trolley each in the first class lounge.
Okay.
So they were making their equivalent of a martini, and then served out to customers in the first class on the plane. So it was amazing. And actually, that was one of the trips I didn't actually go on. So I was working behind the scenes a lot on the logistics of it, and obviously all the years following that. But I didn't personally go onto that plane and experience it. But the team, the rest of my team who went on said it was absolutely amazing. And I think that year from memory, Gareth might tell me if I'm wrong here, but I believe that he got all of his ingredients confiscated at customs coming through before he performed, that he'd practiced obviously for hours. And more than anyone how how much stress that could cause of, having everything ready to go in your suitcase and then pulled away from you last minute. And Gareth was actually walking around the duty free and departure lounge looking for new ingredients and equipment to then take onto the plane to then perform.
No way.
And he ended up winning it. So, hats off to him for that, because, that was one of the biggest turnarounds I've ever seen at a global or a UK final.
Can you imagine the levels of stress?
Yeah, it is insane. And I think that's when our jobs really kick in, because as we all know in competitions that, bad stuff happens sometimes, things you're unprepared for. And as we always, to many bartenders that have, competed in competitions over the years, is that, you always pack 3 separate glasses of the same glass in 3 different suitcases just in case one breaks. And so there are absolute tips to know to how to cater for them and overcome them. But sometimes things just go missing or things just get broken, and you have to know how to adapt to that. And hopefully, I was there as a, world-class manager and my full brand ambassador team to help support in those moments where times got hard, and unexpected, and we were there to support that and, hopefully get people back on track.
So you speak a lot about training. How do you go about organizing training sessions, and have the needs of bartenders changed throughout your career?
Yeah, I mean, training to me is vital. I think in each part of my career where I've gone, training in, a large chain of bars, through to event staff when they come on to our events, and then now, which we'll come on to in a bit, around global bartending, around managing talent, that it is vital, isn't it, to any industry, and to make sure that you receive the right training to be the best you physically can. And I never stop personally learning. I listen to everybody that I speak to. I think the most successful people out there are the best listeners, would be one of my gauges. I think people that listen well to others, and genuinely understand what they're asking and being able to apply that is very, very important. So yeah, no, training for me was vital. And it was a big part of, building the brand ambassador team, where we really had to learn and create bespoke training modules for our ambassadors to build their expertise in what was quite, as you said earlier, quite a lost role. And in many companies, it varied. You would speak to one ambassador from one drinks company. They had a very different role to one that was at Diageo, or one to was, in a smaller drinks business. So, it was really understanding what the value of that person brings to the business. And I always speak about value and not cost, because people, which I'll come on to with global bartending in a moment, but we often talk a lot around day rates and what you cost, but that doesn't really undervalue, or that doesn't value what you bring to that business sometimes. So it's about articulating what that cost is worth as value to a business. And that's where I always found a massive disconnect between the on-trade, I guess, and corporate businesses.
Very cool. And just to close on the training bit, have the needs of the bartending community changed in the past 10 years when it comes to training? Do you find yourself that some of the trainings that you were providing at the early stage of your career are perhaps redundant at this stage?
I think if I talk specifically about the world-class training that we used to tour with and train out to hundreds of bartenders across the country. That content evolved on a 6-monthly basis. So every 6 months we would revisit the content of that training program and look at what was current. And as we know, especially in the UK, trends move so quickly. We're generally at the top of the pyramid for trend insight a lot of the time from food and drink. And so we have to move quicker than many other countries around the world for, what we're delivering from an on-trade perspective. But then it's on us to then think, how do we then relook at the training content to deliver out? And, a big passion of mine was future trends, and it still is. I am obsessed with innovation. I'm always looking for what we believe, is the next big thing. And that's why I dedicated a lot of the training content to future trends within World-class, because I think having a good understanding of macro trends in the world gives you a better understanding to predict what will happen within the food and drink industry. And, as people that have come to my seminars before and, have listened, I always make the point around, if you want to predict the future of food and drink, don't look within food and drink. Always look into other industries like cosmetics and technology, understand, the 30-year plan of where those industries are going, and then see how that can then be applied to food and drink, because we're actually fairly low down the chain when we come to predicting trends. And they're usually heavily inspired by, the cosmetics industry is a great example, and perfumery, because if people always ask me as well the question when we used to, do a speed round in World-class, or we used to say, oh, you've got 1 hour, a market challenge to go and choose ingredients and vessels and come back and make a drink within 1 hour. And they would always ask me, well, if I ever set that challenge, where would I go? And I always say I would go to a supermarket. And they would say, oh, what, you'd go to the supermarket and look down the exotic fruit or the spice aisle? I would say, no, I would go down the cosmetics aisle, and I would look to see what the flavor combinations are in perfumes, in creams, in shampoos. Because if you actually go and look at those flavor combinations down that aisle, they are years ahead sometimes of food and drink. And even at the top end of the drinks industry, they're ahead. So that's just a sort of good insight into saying, wow, look into cosmetics, look into perfumery, and you will find the next hidden, flavor combination that you'll be releasing in your bar 5 years from now.
Wow, that's fascinating. Awesome. Thank you very much for touching on that. So we discussed your years as brand ambassador. We talked about World-class, but obviously all good things have to come to an end. What made you think that you were ready to move on?
So I guess the first point I'll make is that it was the hardest decision in my career, leaving Diageo. I loved that team, like family. And it was a very, very hard decision to be made. I made it fairly quickly because I knew I didn't want to sit on it for too long before I changed my mind. I made the decision in November 2017, and I left in December. So it was a very, very quick exit, but for very good reasons. For 2 years prior to leaving Reserve and running World-class, I had continuously seen this disconnect between bartending talent across the world and the way that they were getting utilized by drink brands, by opportunities or the lack of opportunity outside of the drinks industry. And I knew, I guess, that I had built up a very specific skill set over the years to understand corporate drink businesses and a deep understanding of how the best bartending talent across the world function and their needs at that time. And the needs, from many of them, not everybody, everybody has a very different perspective of where they want to take their career. But from many top bartenders that I spoke to across the world was that they would like bigger opportunities not just in the drinks industry, but outside of the drinks industry, to be able to grow themselves as brands and become household names, the same as that we've seen and witnessed chefs do that over the past decade. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And there wasn't a company out there to be able to do that for anybody. And I don't think that program can be solely owned by a drinks company. I think it has to be owned by somebody independent. Absolutely partnering with drinks companies, yes, but I don't think that would ever be delivered by a drinks company. And so that was when, I really considered every angle of it over 2 years, and then decided to leave to open up the world's first talent agency for bartenders.
So one of the aspects that you mentioned is that you notice that chefs have this way of developing their careers outside a kitchen, so they can develop their own brands. What makes you think is the reason that this has not happened with bars yet?
I think what we often do in the top end of the drinks industry as a collective sometimes is we focus too much on the top end of the drinks industry and the people within it. And we have to understand that the reason, the main reason why chefs have become household names is because of the general public and because of consumers. And the need from that side of, people cooking more at home and wanting to learn ingredients and methods of cooking, and then watching cooking TV programs, and then by default, then certain personalities, certain chefs then becoming famous through those channels. But the need is from the consumer. So what we're witnessing at the moment is a need from the consumer to have a greater knowledge on making drinks. And so that's the reason why I waited until, we launched the company back in 2018. I did it fairly under the radar. I didn't have any interviews in press. We did no major marketing on the business because we wanted to make sure that when we got to, 2-3 weeks ago when we launched, that the business was a fully established functioning entity that was ready to go from the moment that we pressed green, And so, it was 2 years in the making. There was a lot of research involved. There was a lot of legal consultation involved over the last 2 years to produce our contracts for our talent. Lots of meetings with lots of, massively influential people across the world within the drinks industry. And, and most importantly, I think people forget sometimes it's not all about, the coolness and the PR ability of a business, but the financial part of it. And I knew that by launching a global talent agency that we had to have a good foundation and good cash flow, to be able to sustain a business of this size. So that's why I worked it for 2 years behind the scenes and then chose to launch it, this year.
So if I have never heard of it, how would you describe Global Bartending?
So Global Bartending is the world's first talent agency representing the most influential bartenders on the planet. Okay, so we as a business have 3 arms. One is what we lead with as a talent agency. So that's how we're branded. That's how we are perceived out to consumers and to the trade. But we have 2 other arms. One is events and the second is strategy. So I chose for the first 2 years to focus on the events and strategic side, to build the business. And what we really focus on are making sure that we are involved with cool, innovative brands coming to market, or brands that are well established out that are just doing great things. And so we take them brands to new heights by creating amazing experiences that are trend leading at that time. We partner with many influential and trend leading companies through technology, through the food industry, and hopefully deliver a unique experience for those brands. And as I said, that's where, my real passion through my career had sat, through growing experiences for brands. So that's where that laid. I work strategically for many brands, all the way from soft drinks to non-alc spirits to spirits. Really dealing what I did at Diageo, really understanding, an on-trade strategy, including, R&D on liquid, drink and menu development, and then through to brand ambassador and bartender training. And then, behind the scenes, in the background of doing all of that over 2 years, I was slowly building the building blocks, I guess, to the talent agency. And as I said, there was an enormous amount of work that's gone into this to get to the position we are today. But yeah, like every business, you have setbacks. You have, I had many meetings with many different people, and, openly, very, very much listening to everyone's point of view, because I knew this had to be accepted across the globe with many different cultures. Yeah, it was a huge amount of work, but I believe we've got to a very good model where we are today. And, hopefully the exposure that we've received over the last 2 or 3 weeks, I want to thank everybody again that's listening to this podcast, and to everyone that's given us the support over the last 3 weeks since launch, because we have had, the most unbelievable response. I didn't expect it, from across the world, all the way from New Zealand to the US and back. Thank you very much for the support, everyone.
That's pretty awesome. And just so we touch on that as well, you have also had a chance to open a bar, am I correct?
Yeah, so we opened, I opened Amigos the day I left Diageo. That was actually what I believe many people thought I left to do. it was an amazing experience for me. I think after working 10 years in corporate, I wanted to get back into operations is the honest answer to that. I really felt like I needed to get back into understanding what operations felt like 10 years on. As you know, it's changed massively in the way that we, look at cocktail menus, the way that we service, the demands from our customers have changed. And so I wanted to get back into that and experience it. So we opened up Amigos. It was, the first, I guess, real high-end cocktail bar in Essex, where I come from. It's where I grew up. It's where I know the public and our customers very well. And I knew the opportunity was there. And so I decided to partner with a most amazing family that I've known for many years, that already owned a restaurant, Italian restaurant and an Italian bar. And we decided to renovate their existing bar into a new concept together as a 50-50 partnership. And so I did that, and was great. And that's where that's where I expressed my love for plants to everybody, I think.
Yeah. So would you like to talk to us about what was the main concept of the bar?
Yeah, I think, so sustainability has been a big passion of mine. We can say, I guess, the word sustainability is a bit of a buzzword, but, for me, especially 6-7 years ago through World-class, it was a big passion of driving, different practices within that across the globe. And I always knew in the back of my mind that I wanted to express that in the best possible way when I left in a bar. So, and my love for botany and plants, everybody, I think 10 years ago, everybody was laughing at me when I was talking about gardening. And I think I don't know if you know Alan Titchmarsh, but Alan Titchmarsh is but he's, a televised gardener, and everyone always put him against me, I think, on TV. But I think gardening's officially become cool now, right? I think we can say, in 2020, everybody shows that they're gardening or planting some type of herb. So I think, it was those two things combined, and my love for innovative drinks was the brief for Amigos. And so, we created, an edible garden, which housed the most in the UK. We had over 150 species of edible plant in our garden. And the whole idea of that was that we would cultivate them all in-house. So we worked with the most amazing company called Evergrow, where we partnered with them. They install an under-counter hydroponic system, and it allowed us to grow from seed to plant in 3 weeks.
Whoa. And
use a selection of hundreds of different herbs to be able to do that. And what we did was, normally Michelin star chefs would use that system to be able to then grow for micro garnishing. We would then take those micro garnishes and then plant them out into our garden and grow them and let them flourish, and then utilize our garden to be the base of our cocktail menu. Mm-hmm. So, the majority of our ingredients were grown in-house, actually housed within the bar or the garden. And then we would use that on a biannual menu. So every 6 months we would change the menu depending on the season of the herbs that we were growing out in the garden. So it was great experience. Learn many techniques through that time as well, of extracting flavor and understanding botany in the drinks world much more. As Dandelion and many other bars around the world, or no longer Dandelion, but many bars around the world and many bartenders that are leading those programs, I think it is the future of our industry. One part of it for definite. But I think bartenders, I think if there's one area that I think we all need to grow our knowledge on, is botany. I always say the fact around that there's over 30,000 edible plants on our planet, and we actually only utilize about 5% of them in the majority of our consumption around the world. So I think we as bar industry, as chefs I would argue that chefs are a bit ahead of us from a foraging perspective and understanding, natural life. But if we can gain a better understanding into that world, I think our drinks will evolve massively.
I agree. This is something that in Asia I've noticed as well, because in most of the countries that I visited there was a lot of focus on cash crops, or like popular crops. So your mangoes and your coconuts and whatever, while the local plants were often not regarded as something that's worthy of being used in a bar. And I think, considering the gigantic biodiversity, it's a bit of a lost opportunity. But, there are a lot of bars that are starting to capitalize on this.
Yeah.
Great. You touched a bit about the future of our industry. I think it'd be quite interesting. It'd be quite interesting to hear what your predictions are. You mentioned that there will be some sort of like home drinking, or like we'll have to look at ways to involve the consumer a bit more when it comes to making drinks at home. Is this something that you see as a direction where we need to expand more as an industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, cocktail delivery service is a very generic term, but I know, because I'm working on quite a number of projects right now with a number of brands, that there will be a huge demand from consumer, but will be in most drink companies' strategic planning, that a big portion of that will now be focusing on how we deliver great experiences at home. I think one initial thought that the bar trade have when they hear that is, wow, do we think people will be drinking at home more than drinking in bars? But I believe that there are massive opportunities, which I think going through COVID, we fast-tracked a lot of those ideas, which I think may have happened in 5 to 10 years from now. Whereas now we're seeing some of the best bars, or, any level of bar across the country, thinking how that they can deliver their service to people's homes. So yes, on a very basic level, we see now, and, especially in the UK, but we start seeing growing in even developing countries around the idea of bottled cocktails, being delivered to people's homes. But then alongside that also comes a lot of digital content. So, fantastic tutorials from top bartenders across the globe of how to make, like we see with chefs, recipe videos, etc., etc. That area will grow exponentially over the next couple of years. And again, COVID has definitely fast-tracked that. And then experiences at people's homes. So I think over the years, we've been so used to many sort of generic catering companies delivering food and basic drink servicing at home, at people's homes. And I think, I know from us specifically from Global Bartending, and hopefully many other businesses in this sector, will really be focusing on delivering great world-class experiences at people's homes, and using, in partnership with great bars, great bartenders. So the whole idea is not to separate the two, but to try and bring those bars into people's homes in different formats.
So, but do you think, because this is a bit of a hot button issue when I speak to my colleagues about it, do you think that incentivizing people to drink at home is a threat for our businesses, or is it an opportunity?
I always look at, evolution or innovation as an opportunity. I think you just have to adapt. I think the businesses that stand still and just hope that everything will go back to normal are the ones that will potentially fail. You've seen some great bars around the world that have acted quickly, bottled their menus up and, found, different lines of distribution to get them out to customers, created great online content from their teams in their bars. I always called out, technology is an area that we have been always behind the curve on technology in the drinks industry.
Agreed.
Massively. And I think it's almost a scare from the hospitality industry that there is this, which I, like many others, believe that, the core to hospitality is this person-to-person interaction. And the whole thought of technology, people get scared about because they believe that it removes the person-to-person. But it's inevitable that, this world, we're having 5G installed everywhere. The reason why 5G is being installed is because the future of technology will not, it will not be catered for by the current network we currently have globally, right? So every industry is powering up for a more technological future. And I believe we need to as a drinks industry. And so whether that's improving digital content that we're doing on social media, to our website content, and then to technology we're actually using in bar, whether that's through our reservation systems, whether that's, touchscreen menus on tables, or, big data when we're starting to understand patterns of how people drink and eat and at what time they eat. If you just look into Samsung and, some great technology companies that provide fridges in people's homes, if you look at the future of what a fridge looks like in 5 to 10 years from now, even, and how they're connected to grocery and that you're able to order from, your fridge automatically knows what product you're missing and can reorder it the day after, et cetera, with face recognition technology of understanding ingredients and how they mix and how they blend, and then giving you outputs of how you can, understand it. So I think we need to look more into other industries to understand how we cater for the future of this world within the hospitality industry.
I agree. And I think also giving people the tools to understand drinks better at home means that when they do go out, they are looking for something that is more of an experience, and they're probably willing to pay more for it, right?
Absolutely. And it's the same with cooking, right? If you look at the question,
Absolutely.
the question that you've just asked me, if you apply that to the food industry, everybody loves cooking, more than ever at home. But that doesn't mean that they don't go to restaurants. It means that actually they appreciate more the level of chefs of what they can do versus themselves at home. So I see that the same in the bar industry, is that I think the more people that can learn how to make cocktails at home instead of defaulting to a glass of wine, you will then grow the cocktail world for bars and restaurants, and therefore growing the careers of bartenders.
That's crazy. I am 100% sure that when you were washing hair at age 16, you didn't think you'd be talking about face recognition in fridges 15 years after that.
Never. Michele, the funniest story with the hairdressing is that they, after 6 months of working for them, they started teaching me how to color people's hair. And not many people know this, even in the drinks industry, but I'm colorblind. So
really?
It was, yeah. I'm colorblind with brown, but specifically with browns, right? So it was like one of the funniest stories because I had to always look at the color codes versus the colors when I'm coloring people's hair. And I just used to get my colleagues in the hairdressers just shaking their head at me going, no, you need to add another color because it's they could see it was developing wrong on the hair. So, but I never told them ever. Yeah. That's why I thought I'd come into the drinks industry. Yeah.
Well, I was about to ask you for a haircut, but I guess I'm not going to do that.
No, I could cut your hair, maybe.
Yeah, but I can't believe you're colorblind. I didn't know that. Well, that proved to be a challenge for you, I guess, at that time, right?
Well, it was more of a challenge for the person who I was coloring their hair, but yeah.
Cool. That was awesome to talk to you. I'm going to ask you the last question, which is a question I asked to everyone, which would be, if you could choose your very last drink, what would that drink be?
Very last drink. Zacapa Old Fashioned.
There you go. It had to have Zacapa because you speak so highly about it. So.
Oh, man. I know my Zacapa Old Fashioned. It's my drink that I've drunk thousands of them in my career, I believe, in many different countries. And it's the drink that always I just feel at home in any bar with any bartender. So yeah, that's my choice of drink.
Cool. Thank you very much for your time, and it was amazing to talk to you.
And you, thanks so much, and massive congrats on this podcast. It's amazing, man. Keep it going.
Thank you so much.
We hope you enjoyed our chat with Daniel. We are Unjiggered_media on Instagram, and you can follow our personal accounts at mmariotti89 for Michele, Alex J. Murphy for myself, and Adrian Bessa for Adrian. Thank you for listening.